Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this TADAT podcast. Here within the podcast, we have several panelists. Shaban Asman, John Chakasikwa, the Executive Director, Commissioner General's Office, Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, Folaset Koka from Lagos State Revenue Service. David Osiani, Honorable David Osiani is the Cabinet Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Kenya. We have Tracy Ann from Ministry of Finance, Jamaica. Dr. Dimitri. Dr. Dimitri is the head of the UNCDF, United Nations Capital Fund. We have Julius Yeager, who is Chief Manager, Taxpayer Services, KRA. We have Stephen Masha, who is Deputy Controller of Budget, Kenya. Patience, she's the Commissioner Legal, Ugandan Revenue Authority. Then a co-moderator, my name is Des Shilabucha. I'm a TADAT assessor. To assist me is Laban. Laban is from the Standard Media Group. Welcome, Dimitri. Welcome, Dimitri, Dr. Dimitri. Dr. Dimitri, in very few words, kindly give us a brief overview of the initiative to enhance OSR in counties in Kenya that the UNCDF Control of Budget, the TADAT Secretariat have been undertaking. Kindly just give us an overview.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, representatives of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, representative of the Office of Controller of Budget, our colleagues from Kenya and other countries, all protocol observed. My name is Dmitry Kuzhudayev. I'm a global advisor at UNCDF. I'm also head of UNCDF in Kenya. Allow me to welcome you all and to thank all our colleagues, starting with the TADAT Secretariat and its head, Mr. Justin Zaka, as well as all other colleagues for contributing to the TADAT assessments in Kenya and for helping organize this event. Today's meeting is part of our ongoing exercise in Kenya on conducting a series of TADAT assessments in a number of counties. It originated within the UN Joint Program on support to devolution in Kenya, and particularly our efforts to improve mobilization of domestic revenues for development at the local level through improved tax administration. But it has expanded beyond the original counties into a number of other counties, including, for example, Nairobi and Mombasa, which were not part of the original group of counties, but which have a very significant own source revenue generation potential. As you may know from the most recent report of the Commission on Revenue Allocation, 95% of Kenya counties significantly underperform against their revenue potential. Almost 66% of all counties collect 4 times less own source revenues than their potential indicates. And another 30% indicate at least 2 times less against the potential. So we are facing a significant challenge here, and through the assessments, as well as through other supporting activities, which included a workshop with the participation of our colleagues from Uganda, Zimbabwe, and Jamaica, who shared their best experiences. We have been able to discuss the root causes of the TADAT findings and of the current OSR situation in Kenyan counties, using the examples and good practices that have been that have been worked out and successfully applied in other countries. Some of them quite close, and some of them, such as Jamaica, quite far. But as we know, the challenges of tax administration are very similar in developing countries, and so even the experiences coming from Jamaica have proven to be quite useful. We would like to continue our cooperation with Kenyan counties by helping them to go beyond the findings of TADAT and really focus on how the bottlenecks and the shortcomings that have been identified during the TADAT assessments can be addressed, and what we can do, or rather what the counties can do in practice, and can do it in a relatively short period of time to significantly improve their OSR situation. And in this exercise, TADAT has proven to be a very effective instrument because it allows counties to baseline their situation against good international experiences. It also helps them understand where they underdeliver and which good practices, good international practices, have not yet been established in their counties, and how they can replicate those practices to the benefit of their administration and, of course, to the benefit of their populations, so that Kenya can implement its development objectives and make a step or two closer towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals.
I'll hand over to Laban to handle the next question.
The question is, looking at the efficient revenue management through collaborations, what does that mean in regards to enhancing OSR?
In the endeavor to enhance sustainability, particularly on the front of ensuring that counties can sustainably raise revenue, there's need for us to bring various players into the fore. Because as an office, our mandate is to oversee the implementation of budgets at both levels of government, that's both the national government and the county government. And budgets cannot be effectively implemented if the revenue sides, because budget have two sides, there's the revenue side and the expenditure side. So looking at the revenue side, there has to be effective management of that revenue in order to ensure that your expenditure objectives and whatever plans that have been outlined for the benefit of the populace are achieved. And now, when we come back to specifically look at the revenue side, you realize that there are a couple of players. The players involve both the taxpayers themselves. They must play a very significant role in ensuring that taxes can be mobilized. There are various service providers, even within that aspect, the framework of revenue generation. Of course, there are development partners that also play a key role in ensuring that as well, we are able to mobilize resources with ease. So it calls upon a couple of players. And in our framework in Kenya, if I may look at, I may focus more closely home and look at the county specifically, that framework and the collaboration involves both not only the key players, that is the counties themselves that are involved in mobilizing the revenue, but we are looking at us as an office also going in to help in ensuring that the forecasting of those revenues is done in a manner and in a way to ensure that we are able to have realistic revenue targets. There's no hidden deficit within the budget framework whereby you have overestimated the amount of revenue to be collected by the end of the financial year. Similarly, there are a couple of service providers also that must be brought into the fore. Those service providers help in ensuring that the systems that are existing also are functional and that they are able to work to the best benefit. And above all now is the taxpayer himself or herself. That is the ultimate person who we must ensure at all times there is adequate level of tax morale. That willingness and ability to pay, the tax morale levels have to be managed through collaborative efforts, through education to the taxpayers, through a demonstration that indeed the taxpayer benefits as a result of the taxes that they do pay. So it's basically not a one-stop shop. There are many players, and for you to achieve the best optimum output, you must put in place strategies that bring into collaboration of all these players, including that now again the other institutions like ourselves that are independent and ultimately have a key role to play as far as the public finance management framework is concerned in the country. Thank you, and back to you.
So the next question I'm putting to Shaban. Shaban is Director of Revenue, Nairobi City County. Shaban, just want you to describe the journey through the TADAT training and now the assessment that Nairobi City County underwent. And then ultimately we are having a strategy development workshop that has been addressing the gaps that were identified during the assessment. How could you describe that journey? What benefit does it do to Nairobi? Has it enlightened you guys? Is it doing the best? Is it answering your questions? Is it going to improve your processes? So just kindly highlight.
First and foremost, I must appreciate the TADAT process which came to do the assessment on the suitability or otherwise, or how appropriate the mechanism used by the county, if they are up to the best practice in the world. And during the assessment, there were so many things which were learned. And I'm happy to say that all through the 9 POAs which were assessed, we learned a lot. And the most important thing is that we identified the gaps, which mainly were based on lack of proper procedures, and most of our work used to be on a ad hoc basis, as opposed to a well-planned operational processes. And our main gap which was identified is a lack of a unified one single system for revenue collection, because currently we are having multiple collection systems which are not integrated, which has made it even very difficult to update the records of our payers, whereby when it comes to even evaluating the performance, it became so difficult. So one of the main take-homes has been having a proper revenue collection system, which is integrated, to get rid of the silos, because the assessment showed that most of our collections are done in silos, because in the county, before the takeover by our current agents, which is KRA, we used to collect these revenues through various sectors. Each sector used to collect revenues following under them, which made it very difficult for proper evaluation, as each and every sector worked in silos. We also learned that the integrity of our taxpayers' record was below par. So there is a need to have a proper, correct, accurate data, so that we are able to correctly project our revenues for the purposes of monitoring, following up, and encouraging voluntary payment, so that adequate funds are available to finance the service delivery to the benefit of the city dwellers. I think that was the main benefit of this TADAT process, so far we have gone through. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaban. Glad that Honorable David Osiani is back. We are very sorry, David, Honorable Osiani.
Thank you, and apologies that I dropped off without intention to, but I'm glad to be back.
Okay, so the question that I want to put to you is
Yes.
What is the value of a functional revenue management system to investors in the perspective of if you understand revenue management either on national level or the county government level, right from when taxpayers pay taxes either to the government or to the county governments, and then these monies are collected by these county governments and the government, and then they are kept by the CBK, and then this is transferred either from the accounting perspective. There is what we call there is a county accounts where these monies, if the counties have to spend the monies, they have to ask a requisition through a requisition to the controller budget, and then the money is spent. Then to the national taxes, these monies will go up to the exchequer account, where it is now the prerogative of the Treasury in consultation with Parliament, who will now spend the money according to the government expenditure needs through the various votes. So just give us, because when investors come in here, they'll always ask us questions in terms of what are the taxes that they are supposed to pay, either to the national government or the county governments. Just give us highlights of this process on the basis of a functional revenue management system.
My name is Honorable David Osiani, as has been mentioned. I'm the Chief Administrative Secretary, or if you like, the Deputy Minister for Trade and Industrialization for the Republic of Kenya. I think nothing could be more important than a functional revenue management system. This is because I think every investor who comes into the country, and since my ministry is mandated to handle investment, courtesy of the Kenya Investment Authority or our Special Economic Zones Authority or the Export Processing Zones Authority, and many others, but we are the touch point for investors, courtesy of our investment authority. It is important for them to understand that what is exactly required of them as investors. That sense of openness, accountability, is a very important thing. When they are assured of what is really needed, it's all clear, it's all clean, they know what is their obligation as investors and what the demands are from government. In cases like our Special Economic Zone Program or Export Processing Zone Program, where we have incentives that are aligned to taxes, then they also know what is clearly needed of them. When we have a working and functional revenue management system, and here I'm saying collection, then it helps them to have, they then have confidence in our country. And that investor confidence has a ripple effect, because most of these investors then say, hey, we have come into a country like Kenya, and we have realized that their revenue management system works well. And we have seen them calling each other. An investor comes and tells the other investor, this is the destination. You're aware that this work alongside all the other agencies here at our ministry, at Treasury, where the Kenya Revenue Authority is domiciled, and all the other actors have worked to ensure that we move Kenya up the ease of doing business index. In Africa, Kenya now stands as the third country that enjoys ease of doing business. And that working and functional revenue management system has been a key pillar to getting us here, only behind Rwanda and Mauritius. And so we reap from the fruits of the good work that's been done by our Revenue Authority. We have the Commission for Revenue Allocation. After collection by KRA, allocation is another whole dynamic. But for investors, I think what's important is, how do we pay our taxes? Is it easy to pay our taxes? Do we know what taxes are that we pay? And there's been a good job going on around that, and it's very important. I couldn't understate it. I mean, I couldn't overstate this more than I have already done. I hope that's as satisfactory as it gets.
I think we'll take it forward as well. And of course, we'll have a session of further engagement as we go along. For now, I just want to tackle this question and maybe pass it over to Tracy Akbona and John Chakasikwa and Julius. So there's a few of you. So I think yours, lady and gentlemen, is purely on how can TAs break silos using TADAT linkages. Please give examples of some business processes that have had an impact on each other. I'll repeat the question. How TAs break silos using TADAT linkages. Please give examples of some business processes that have had an impact on each other. So Tracy, John, Julius, I'll throw it over to you. Whoever is quick to unmute can take the floor.
Thank you so much. So I'm Tracy Mbono. I'm a TADAT assessor. I was previously in tax administration, Jamaica, but now I'm with the Ministry of Finance and Enterprise Risk Management. There are two processes. I'm just going to do two of the processes that I think are linked and they impact each other very strongly. It is the registered taxpayer database and risk management. What you'll find, if that database is not robust, if the information there is not correct, it's not accurate, it is not up to date, what you will find is that the foundation risk assessment or the data gathering in order to assess and analyze risk in the tax administration, both that of compliance risks and human and operational risk, what you'll find is that the risk management activities are all for naught. The results will not impact compliance initiatives. The compliance initiatives would be out of scope and would not be able to yield the benefits of the risk management as you would have hoped.
I wanted to say that when you have the right taxpayer database, the bottom line is that now when you want to encourage voluntary compliance under Part 3, it becomes very easy because you have what I would call targeted capacity building. You know whom you are addressing. And that is exactly what has saved us so much at the Kenya Revenue Authority. What we have always done is to ensure that when we are conducting training to encourage voluntary compliance, we ensure that each and every tax service office spread all over the country, we apply for 1 and we also apply for 3. And this has made it very easy for us to know who are our taxpayers, what are their challenges, and if they have the disputes, again, we are also able to see to it that that is done and the right person is addressed. So I would encourage those who are to learn from what we have gone through to make use of the TADAT processes in coming up with their procedures and processes in addressing their areas. That's what I wanted to pass across. Thank you.
Let me just give an overall picture of what we are going through in terms of this workshop with NCC and the rest of the participants. I think domestic resource mobilization as a theme, when you look at it, it does not only resonate with the national revenue authorities. I think we all appreciate the focus on DRM being of national importance. We actually look at the two levels. So we have the national revenue authorities or the TAs that do raise taxes at that level. And then we have at the subnational level. Now the question is, we are looking at the same taxpayer. There's a taxpayer who pays local taxes at the local government level. The same are also paying taxes at the higher level, national level. Now, is it a matter of competition between the local governments and the revenue authorities? So the agenda in terms of DRM is not really for the local governments to fight with the revenue authorities. I think the lesson that is coming through from here is with the national agenda of domestic revenue mobilization is an opportunity to come together. It's an opportunity to integrate. It's an opportunity to share or leverage on each other's strength between the national revenue authorities and the local governments. I think we all appreciate that the taxpayer we are talking about, they all belong to a certain county or a local government. That means if you look at the advantages of the local authorities who are closer to the tax base, they have that advantage of having boots on the ground. I think we all appreciate when it comes, for example, to informal taxis, they can reach easily to those informal players or taxpayers. At the same time, when you look at POA1, the strength in having your tax register strong and with integrity, the national revenue authorities have a strength in third-party information sources. They link up with national registration, register of companies, and the banks, which advantage they can then share with the local authorities. So, two things. Once we identify the advantages for the revenue authorities in terms of them administering tax, they then share that with the local authorities and vice versa. I think when all is said and done, you have a domestic revenue mobilization agenda at a national level that resonates not just with the revenue authority, but also with the local governments. And that synergy, that sharing, that collaboration, I think it gives a lot of advantage at the national level. So you link revenue authority, revenue administration at national level and PFM on the other side to balance both the revenue side and the expenditure side.
Patience, Patience, if you could just chime in.
Okay, thank you so much, Laban. My name is Patience Tumsime Rwagumya. I am the Commissioner for Legal Services and Border Affairs in Uganda Revenue Authority, and I'm also a TADAT assessor. So moving on to the question that Laban you've asked, I think it is important in the context of a domestic resource mobilization. It is one of those key strategies that we all must embrace in terms of making sure that we raise sufficient revenues that are going to take our country to another level. And it is important that even as we move ahead, that the members as well get to find ways on how they can work together. So in terms of other linkages, and this is where that framework is very key, because it is able to bring into a framework that enables us who are in tax administration to find ways on how we can cooperate together, on where we can collaborate as tax authorities, on where we can share experiences. So moving on to the linkages, for instance, and this is where TADAT is beautiful. It has a framework that we are able to pick and be able to draw lessons or process or have manuals that are able to help us to improve. I'll give you just an example in terms of the linkages. If you look at POA 3, we are looking at voluntary compliance as opposed to dispute resolution. It is important that we give or we have a framework that is able to explain to the taxpayers what are their rights, what are their obligations. So in having that framework, when it is well done, then you'll have a framework where the taxpayer will know that for me to object, this is a process that I must take. So to be able to, once you've had your POA 3 worked on, you've given out all the information, the taxpayers really know what it is they are supposed to do. Then it gives you that ambit that even when they come to dispute resolution, more or less the issues have been identified. All they're looking at is possibly how can an issue be resolved. But it is not about that I did not know what I was supposed to do, because you would have handled that under POA 3. The other related area, for instance, I'll talk about is risk management. When you use that framework for risk management, it is going to give you a good starting point in knowing who your taxpayers are. So you will be able to identify them and be able to classify them into the different levels. Are they high risk? If it is high risk, then what method of dispute resolution must you use? So linkages like that enable us to be able to understand our taxpayers better, which is very key really. For us to be able to move forward and raise sufficient revenues from the resources that we have, we must first of all understand who our taxpayers are. That is very key for all the processes that to go if you're to be able to move on. And it also relates to the integrity of our tax register, because that is a starting point. Once that is done very well, and you have all the information within that database, not just the information, but is the information accurate, then I believe that that also gives you a springboard to be able to move. So you find that that gives you that whole framework where once everything is done very well, then you're able to get a springboard where you're not simply getting revenues by force, you're simply making sure that taxpayers comply voluntarily. Voluntary compliance is very key in a tax administration, because then what you need or what you're looking for is to make sure that taxpayers voluntarily comply, that you only have maybe few taxpayers that you have to run around with or to run after. But ultimately, you want everybody to know, why am I paying my taxes? Why should I pay? And if I do not pay, what are the consequences? But then that all comes up into the TADAT linkages that once we work on together, then we are able to see the results. And lastly, maybe on that point, Laban, it is an issue we are talking about accountability and transparency. That is very key in terms of raising resources, in terms of being able to shift the culture of the taxpayers, because many of them indeed want to know, what is my money doing? That is a question that is very key if we're able to move along on this journey. So once all these areas, the procedures and the transparency and the POA 9 are also considered, then it also gives you that framework. It gives you a springboard to be able to move together with the taxpayers, but also to explain, if money has been collected, what is it that the government has done with the resources that we've been able to collect? So these are some of the areas really that I believe that once we work on, ultimately we should be able to attain the vision for our countries, that we must fight for economic independence. Economic independence, particularly for the African states, it is something that we all must work towards. It is an area that we must put all our efforts together. And this is where even this collaboration is very key, because we are able to learn experiences from the different states, from the different countries, from the different counties, but together we are all fighting for one vision. And I believe that once we continue with collaborations like this, once we continue with experiences and the sharing of information and supporting one another on this journey, we should be able to make a significant impact in the different tax administrations that we are currently serving. So Laban, I will possibly stop here for now. Thank you so much.
We'll still want to continue that same breath and have Dr. Folosade just chime in as well onto the same bit.
Thank you, Laban, and good afternoon all. My name is Folosade Koka. I'm the current Director, Informal Sector and Special Duties for a subnational, the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. So going back to the conversation, there are three main components for domestic resource mobilization. And one is organizational management and development. The other is communicating and prospecting, and then relationship building. And this ties together everything that TADAT stands for. Looking at integrity of the registered taxpayer base, you cannot divorce that from the impact that it has on voluntary compliance. Because as Patience also said, once you get the foundation right, you are able to build a structure that would last. And that's all that TADAT is all about. So you have an accurate database that has an impact on voluntary compliance. And then you also tie that to accountability. As she also said, it's very important that government policies and infrastructures and everything that government does goes back to let the taxpayers understand the link or the linkage between tax payments and the deliverables that government would make happen with respect to security, infrastructure, social development, and all that. So you have to keep putting it in their faces as to your accountability and your duties, that taxpayers' money has made this happen. I'll take for an example, when I look at Lagos. Lagos, you have free education. All the children from primary school up to secondary school go to school free. So in the informal sector where I work, I try to bring that linkage to be that it's your taxpayers' money that is making the government to be able to deliver on free education to all the children in Lagos. So that accountability would drive and motivate taxpayers to willingly and voluntarily comply with tax payments, as against you're having to go into enforcement to get them to pay same. So those linkages are very key, and one simply goes on the other. And then when I look at the TADAT wheel, I remember this riddle, or is it a quote that says, the rolling stone gathers no moss. So when you look at the TADAT wheel, you realize that if everything is working hand in glove, and there is a sync and a seamless integration of all the systems, and everyone is feeding the other, then you have a wheel that is functional and is creak-free because it's well greased and the hinges are well oiled, and everything works together to ensure that revenue is generated, and not only generated, but at the time as when due. So it's important to look at the linkages to ensure that there are no silos, and continuously nil out the silos, so that that mobilization of resource can come together. And then also it enables a robust tax system, and then it also must be complemented by sound budget policies, because it's one thing for you to generate the revenue and they're not having sound budget policies to utilize it. So the TADAT system and those linkages enable and enhance that to come into place. Thank you very much.
Honorable David Osiani, you talked of a centralized government approach when it comes to investors. Now we have these several players that affect investors when they come in. So an investor has to come in to get a PIN. Then they have to get some approvals at Kenya Invest. KRA has also a liaison office at the Kenya Invest offices. And then, of course, we have now the county governments. So investors who are doing business, for example, will have to get a single business permit if they are operating in Nairobi. So I just wanted us to just confirm if these processes align themselves to the collaboration processes that we are talking about, the Vision 2030. And also the theme of this podcast, breaking barriers. So is it working?
Breaking barriers is our only way to move ahead in business. And breaking barriers means sometimes having to unify functions so that then what is done in one bit must not be replicated in another bit. Of course, we've made progress to first have at the Kenya Investment Authority what we call the one-stop center. The one-stop center envisages that if an investor were to come to our Kenya Investment Authority office, then they will find all these other functions, the Kenya Revenue Authority being one of the most key, handled in one place. However, my belief is we are able to graduate and move to a situation where if you get a license at the KRA headquarters, then the county knows that you're already licensed and must not ask for it. So that even if it's being charged, it's charged in one place. That will really move us far. Definitely, we are forging towards the right direction, towards a unified approach of management. And I thank TADAT for their contribution towards this journey of better services, unification of these services. If an investor is in Nairobi, for example, you'll find that their licenses, that they will have to be charged in this county, and they move to the next county, and their charges on those. We hope to break barriers first, literally, physically, cross-county, but beyond that, also to just ensure that it's much easier so that if an office, if KRA or if the county is given the functions to be able to handle the licensing at that bit, they do it tremendously. However, as I've stated before, our greatest investments towards the unification and proper functionality of these processes must be an investment in two major currencies, the currencies of trust and the currency of integrity. We must be able to know that what is done at this level means something. The systems have proper integrity, and therefore there's no need to even counter-verify. Until and unless we achieve that, we will have a challenge. And I must admit that the Kenya Revenue Authority here in country has done an excellent job to ensure that their systems have proper integrity. So we look forward to forging towards a single business permit, in the sense that it covers all the functions needed for a business to operate. Then it really will be a single business permit.
Dr. Dimitri, just picking up from the two reactions from Honorable David Osiani, I just want you to maybe expound from a donor perspective the effect of the domestic resource mobilization vis-a-vis now the TADAT linkages, and for the benefit of the other listeners and the other facilitators in the room, TADAT simply means Tax Administration Diagnostic Assessment Tool that has been developed by the IMF that checks the strengths and weaknesses of a tax administration. That is the meaning of TADAT. And then when our facilitators, panelists talk about the POAs, the methodology is made up of 9 areas. So there is the POA is performance outcome area 1, 2, 3, up to 9. So we don't really want to go into the explanations of the technical meaning of the areas, but just for the sake to have a general understanding. So Dr. Dimitri, then just coming to explain what I've just asked, and then you will also add in the role of what do you think the role of the UNCDF and other donor partners will play towards now enhancing this collaboration?
Well, from the development partners' perspective, we believe that the focus on improvement of local tax administration is important for several reasons. One of the major reasons is to enable local governments to exercise their mandated functions. And this is an extremely important consideration. If you think about it, then the whole raison d'etre for local governments is service delivery to the population. And we believe that local governments have some comparative advantages in that respect as compared to the central government. And in particular, they have better allocative and productive efficiencies due to their closeness of the population and due to their ability to better identify the local preferences. However, it's very clear that if local governments don't have necessary financial resources for that, they will not be able to deliver on their development promise. Moreover, financial resources differ. And in many cases, we have seen an increase in reliance of local governments on central government transfers. This is, in our opinion, a somewhat unfortunate trend because whereas it allows local governments to deliver basic services, it takes away from them the sense of responsibility and the sense of accountability to the population, which are, I would say, the two major pillars on which local government is established. Reliance on central government transfers removes the incentives for local governments to engage in meaningful ways with the population and make sure that the services delivered really meet the expectations and needs of the locality. This is why UNCDF, among other development partners, says that strengthening the own source revenue and asset management functions at the local government level is an extremely important task. I have mentioned before how much Kenyan counties under-deliver against their potential, and this is still an issue. We have significantly improved the availability of finance and therefore the scope and quality of the services delivered at the local level if we manage to bring counties to the own source revenue frontier. And central government transfers are anyway not a unique answer to the issue of resource mobilization at the local level. The Chief Administrative Secretary has mentioned the importance of revenue collection in the context of, and tax administration in general, of course, in the context of investment. I had a discussion last week with the governor of Laikipia. As you know, Laikipia has moved with the issuance of the first subnational revenue-based bond in Kenya. But much as it addresses certain needs of the county, it is not sufficient for addressing some significant gaps, in particular in water supply and delivery. And here, where the county needs more resources, and those resources cannot be provided from the treasury, because ultimately, as you know, the situation in Kenya is such that subnational debt is guaranteed by the central government, meaning in practice that any subnational bond issue is backed by the treasury assets. So what Laikipia is considering at the moment is raising and structuring another bond, but a bond that would be issued by the county water supply company. And that, of course, requires, because it has to be revenue-based, there is no other way how it can be issued, it of course requires a strong revenue base. And it requires a well-performing tax administration, whether at the level of the county or at the level of that particular entity. That is kind of a secondary issue, but you cannot simply imagine some islands of perfect tax administration in the sea of poorly performing administration. It has to be more or less uniform. Our experience as a development partner in other countries shows that improvements in actual revenue administration and revenue collection can be achieved over a relatively short period of time to a level of, and I'm talking about a short time of a year or 2 years over a medium-term period, can be achieved to a level of 50 to 150%. What it really takes, it does not take so much money, it does not take so much expertise, but it does take a lot of political will. Because, and this is another experience, we know have political roots. Addressing those political roots and dealing with them requires, I would say, not only political will, but also political courage at the local level. As a development partner, UNCDF stands with our partner local governments and central governments. We are supporting the process of tax improvement and OSR collection through what we call revenue enhancement action planning exercise, which brings together quantitative and qualitative revenue diagnostics, where the qualitative part of it is based on TADAT, on Tax Administration Diagnostic Assessment Tool, which then moves towards development of very specific and costed revenue enhancement action plans. And we provide both technical expertise and financial incentives in the form of matching grants or recoverable grants to facilitate and fund implementation of such revenue enhancement action plans. So we look forward to our continued engagement with Kenyan counties, as well as, and this is extremely important, I believe it came out very clearly, with all other relevant partners, not only relevant ministries, departments, and agencies at the central level, but also civil society and the private sector at the local and central levels.
If you look in the financing of the budget of the county government, it's majorly made up of the equitable share on an average, which is over 70% for the Kenyan counties. And then we have the OSR. Some counties in 3%, others will go up to 10%. And then we have the grants, maybe from the donors. So I just wanted you to comment on the issue of the Laikipia County going towards now issuance of bond to finance its budget. How do you receive it from the perspective of the Office of Control of Budget?
Borrowing is one of the sources. You earlier indicated that counties receive fundings in various categories. There is the equitable share, which is receivable from the nationally collected revenue. There is also conditional grants that are also received either from development partners, or sometimes it may be a share of the national government's resources that are given to the counties to undertake specific objectives where counties are better placed to deliver on those objective areas than the national government. There is also now the critical one, which is the on-source revenue, where counties under the constitution, they are permitted to raise revenue from specific tax categories, that is land rates, and so can also charge a fee for service. This is also another source of revenue. But coming back to the last one, the one that we are of concern to you, is the borrowing. Whether counties can go out there, raise money in the open markets, bond. I want to mention that our public finance management framework requires equity. You cannot burden future generations. Even as we go out to borrow, we must ensure that that which we borrow today is justifiable, as equitable as possible, even for future generations. And therefore, in the first few years of devolution, there was a moratorium to say the counties cannot borrow until certain thresholds are met, certain provisions of the law are in place, so that we do not rush into borrowing at the expense of future generations. I think that is a safeguard that we put in the Constitution to ensure that as we borrow, we do not commit the flow of resources and also disadvantage future generations. But where borrowing is good, where funds are put into a very, very good use that will be able to multiply, that multiplier effect is what we are looking for, and be able to generate resources. The long and short of it is that it is a good way to diversify, a good approach and a window that can give diversity. We can be able to diversify. We can be able to implement projects that we would otherwise not be able to implement because of lack of resources. It gives you an additional wiggle room. That additional wiggle room where you can be able to implement activities that if you are only to rely on your own sources, you would not be able to implement. Overall, the framework permits borrowing as we speak in Kenya, where counties are allowed, they can go out and borrow. But one caveat is, in order to safeguard the taxpayer, we have ensured in the framework that all borrowing must be guaranteed by the national government. There must be that guarantee by the national government, so that even in the eyes of the lenders, then they are guaranteed, they have an assurance that indeed that which they lend to counties will ultimately go back to them. I think that's the overall framework that I could add on the comments that you would earlier have expected from Honorable Osiani.
Dr. Fulton, the question to you is, how can county governments, local governments, that is, enhance their revenue management using the international good practices?
Using the international good practice, I spoke earlier about accountability and transparency, because what I found out is that at the local government level, at the grassroots level, what they see is what they believe. They do not have much time to listen to you, but what they feel the pulse of the government and the impact of the government by the infrastructure and things around them. And they are not really IT savvy or knowledgeable. So what you can use to actually get the local government or the informal sector people to come on board and be tax compliant is basically you have to do a lot of enumeration, enlightenment, and engagement. So there has to be a lot of stakeholders engagement in a language that they understand. So you simplify all the things that we've learned about the performance outcome areas, the benefits of being on the database, the impact to being counted as a citizen of the country, and the impact as to health, the benefits the government will try to put on the table, the impact as to health, security, provision of basic amenities, education for their children. So you bring this in, and these are also value add from any economy or any government to its people. So this brings in good practice in the sense that you also try to do a lot of transparency. These people are not that learned and they are not IT savvy. So you should ensure that you put in place a structure where their payments would count and where they'll get acknowledgement and value for the money that they pay. Then you should also bring ease of doing business in the sense that most of them might not have that quantum, or they might not have the money to take on auditors or consultants to actually look into their books. So you have to do a kind of simplified process where it's easy for them to pay either using the USSD code, so they can sit in the comfort of their businesses. And I found out that a lot of people at the local government level also do not have the time to leave their businesses and go about looking for tax stations to pay their taxes. So you have to bring the tax payment structure into their space and make it easy for them to pay in an easy way and in an understandable way. Then it goes back to the frequently asked questions. You have to simplify the frequently asked questions into languages that they understand. Then you have to do a lot of jingles in a way that they will be able to explain to them. Also, stakeholders engagement in languages or using structures that are common or usual to them. Like in the market space, you have the market leaders, you have the market heads, you have the various languages having a kind of head in the market. So you communicate and converse with them in a language and in a way that they understand. This brings ease of doing business, and this would also be commensurate or in line with ease of doing business. So you have to tie their tax payment to values from government. I spoke earlier about schools and children going to free education from primary to secondary in Lagos State. So we try to tie that and to let them know that it is taxpayers' money that has made it happen. And that once you have a bucket or a bowl and people keep taking water out of it and nothing is going back into it, then it's going to have a rippling effect or an impact on the people. That so you are benefiting at the grassroots or local government level by having your children go to free schools provided by taxpayers' money. So it's also important for you that you also contribute your little token into the sport so that this free education can go a long way and other children can continue to benefit. So you have to tie that accountability and integrity of the system, of the structure, and of the government is key to ensuring that people at the local government pay their taxes. Thank you very much.
What has Nairobi County seen through this strategy development workshop? What has Nairobi County seen in an attempt to map the various TADAT linkages to persons who are responsible for those areas? And what are the anticipated next steps? Shaban, over to you.
As I said earlier, we learned a lot from the TADAT assessment, and after the report, we are currently going through the report, through all the POAs, and identifying the gaps. We are coming up with the proposed intervention with the specific person, responsible person for each and every POA, with the proposed action line, and in our plan we propose that some of these interventions and proposals have got there are those which can be done immediately, there are those which can be done in medium term, and those of long term. So we have properly profiled them and identify each and every action line, and we hope that by end of this week we will come up with an appropriate plan with the proper action line, with proper timeline, with specific people, and some of the intervention include capacity building, which may require some funding, and we also need assistance from the TADAT organization, because we need some expertise so that we can have our people having the same capacity, so that we are able to be at even if at the best, not at the best practice, but nearing the best practice. And what has come out also very clearly is that these things are dynamic. They need to be reviewed from time to time. But in a nutshell, we have what we call a roadmap, whereby we have identified all the gaps which were highlighted in the PR report, and with the suggestions. And in fact, in the last 2 weeks, we have been reviewing them and coming up with the appropriate action plan. And I believe that with the support of the TADAT team, the Nairobi City County will move from the current rating towards nearing the best practice in the world. And that will ensure that the county is able to not only to do proper focusing for its revenue, but effectively collect the same, account for the same, and increase the same, and have adequate funding to provide to fund for the service provision to the benefit of Nairobians, which in turn will, in fact, encourage even compliance from the Nairobians.
What are the key takeaways and collaborations supporting each other within Kenya and cross-border? That's from the ongoing strategy planning workshop.
So really, what are the key takeaways? That is the question from this wonderful collaboration that we've been having. One, I think it is the fact that we all face the same challenges. It is very interesting when you hear from the different facilitators, and even arising from the NCC assessment that was done, that the challenges which they are facing really have been faced by all of us at one stage or another. So that is a very good starting point, because then you're able to see that indeed there is hope, or that you can change things along the way. So for me, I think that is one of the things that has come through very prominently. The next area is the fact that we need to use or introduce IT in our different processes. We are all operating in a very manual environment, but when you see the challenges that come through in having a manual environment as opposed to an IT environment, then you realize that we in tax administration, all of us, we must make an effort to be able to automate the different processes that we have, because then that gives us a lot of mileage. And the best example here really is in terms of the database. but also being able to share information with the rest of maybe the stakeholders. So it is very important that even as we work through, we are able to design or find ways on how we can get support to be able to automate the different processes that we have within the different administrations. The other area is the fact that we do not have to reinvent the wheel. It has been done elsewhere. And here I'd like to quote my dear friend, Mr. Zaki, from the TADAT Secretariat. He says, you do not have to reinvent the wheel because it has been done elsewhere. Somebody else has actually done it. And through this collaboration and the hearing from the different facilitators, sharing experiences, from Nigeria, from the URA, from KRA, you realize that you can actually get an area where you immediately go to a person for support. For instance, I can go to Dr. Fola. Now I know if I need to get something very good in a prosecution, I simply have to give her a phone call and be able to get what they have done and be able to replicate the same in the NCC or even in the URA, KRA. So this is one of the things really that is very beautiful about engagements and collaboration like this, that you can use the contacts, that you're able to get the experiences that somebody has gone through and they've been able to implement this successfully. And then you're able to bring it back home and customize it to some extent, but then it will be able to serve the same purpose. So you find that frameworks like this, and from this strategy workshop that we have had, that is so much that we have learned. There are many areas. And the good thing or the beauty about raising taxes in tax administration is that the environment is constantly changing. That is another area that I think that we need all to agree on. It is constantly changing. So you might find that the one solution that you implemented today will probably not serve the same purpose 2 years down the road. So it is important for us to continuously have these collaborations, to continue the discussions that even as we move together, can we be able to step back and look at what we have done and implemented and ask ourselves, is there something else that we can do to be able to make a difference? So that continuous assessment, that continuous collaboration with the peers is what is going to take us to another level. Because then when you hear from your peer who has gone through the same experience, then you're confident that you can actually do it. Because then you know you're operating under the same circumstances, more or less. The environment is more or less the same. Even the tax laws that we do implement, which is very good, is that they're all within the same framework. So then you're able to draw upon that experience and then be able to build your own systems and be able to move forward. The other area that I've seen that a big takeaway is in terms of tax policy. Tax policy as well is ever evolving. So this framework has also given us an opportunity to see which areas in our different laws do we have to amend, or what kind of areas do we have to consider going forward to be able to build on to what we have, to be able to make suggestions and have these engagements with our policymakers at the respective ministries of finance. Because it is through listening to different experiences, listening to different facilitators, that you're able to pick one thing or two that you can then write on and then be able to make proposals, to be able to make or suggest amendments that will help us to move forward. But this collaboration, I think for me, Laban and Des, it is excellent. And it is one of the things that we need to continuously do across the continent, be able to keep in touch and work together to be able to come up and be the best that you can in terms of making a difference for our respective countries.
The ideals or the objectives of this workshop, the strategy development workshop, was to actually make use of the low-hanging fruits. The low-hanging fruits in terms of the county governments are supposed to actually make use of what is readily available to address the issues that have been identified or the gaps in the assessment. So how do you think Kenya Revenue Authority will come in and assist counties in terms of the areas that they are lagging behind so that they can move forward without necessarily committing so many resource persons, further technical assistance. So I just want you to just come in a very clear perspective, how KRA will come in to address issues to do with the register, Is it supporting voluntary compliance, risk management? Just in a nutshell, not really elaborate, but from what we are going through the development of the strategy, how does KRA come in?
One, as Kenya Revenue Authority, given that our taxpayers are the same taxpayers that serve Nairobi County, we are really too willing to help Nairobi County improve on their taxpayer register. I'm saying this because we really tried to engage them when it came to the single business permit. We really want to help them in the sense that if somebody was to go to seek for single business permit at the county government of Nairobi, we should be able to assist them, even the details. And the details here mean if the county government would also be capturing the ID number of their taxpayers, if they were to share that ID number with Kenya Revenue Authority, we will be able to share with them the pain of those taxpayers. And for direct revenue, this should really be impacting positively on your end. So feel free to engage us as Kenya Revenue Authority, because we are saying that, why do you want to reinvent the wheel when already we have this data? So when taxpayers come to your county government to ask for single business permit, and this is the approach we had started from the earlier on, and I'm saying that we are willing to help you on this. Something else, I would want to urge county government of Nairobi to know that the kind of system, so the ICT development in Kenya Revenue Authority is so advanced, very advanced. Having been an ICT manager in KRA myself, we are willing to help you. Let's collaborate. Let's help you with your systems. This is something doable. You can still ride even on the iTax system. Yeah, we only need to create a tax head for various Nairobi County government tax obligations, and this will work out. Something else that we can help you on, Nairobi County, is that we are very advanced when it comes to taxpayer education, taxpayer capacity building. This is something that we have done elaborately, both physical and even virtual. We can help you on this one so that you can be having targeted taxpayers within your county brought on board. Finally, KRA is also very much advanced when it comes to risk management. They will be able to help you on this one. So there's, as Kenya Revenue Authority, we would be very glad really to help Nairobi County government adopt and improve on their processes and even their procedures. And given that we have a good training school, having myself being the former principal of the training school, both the e-campus and the physical campus, we can still help you in capacity building. So there's so much that KRA can share with the Nairobi County government. Kindly don't reinvent the wheel. We are here for you and we are willing to help you. As the head of taxpayer services, get in touch with me, I'll support you. And as I mentioned last time, this is free of charge. You don't have to pay us anything, because when we come to give capacity, the same taxpayers that will be giving capacity are the same ones with the Kenya Revenue Authority.
Now, to Dr. Dimitri, you know very well the TADAT assessment itself. It's a report, the performance assessment report. It doesn't give recommendations or solutions. So this workshop is coming up with a reform strategy. What is your comment from a donor's perspective? If I know the strategy paper will be shared with you and the other donors, so that we believe that donors will come in specifically maybe to address some areas and run with them. So we just want to hear your reactions to this.
We need reforms and actions at two levels. One is the county level. And our strategic workshop focused mostly on the county level. But the second level, where we also need to choose pertaining to own source revenue generation at the local level, is the central level. And it concerns the fiscal and budget autonomy of local governments. So going to the level of the counties, the major resource and the major emphasis where the low-hanging fruits are available is improving the tax effort at the county level. Because, as you know, the total revenue generation is tax effort times tax base. Even without significant changes in the tax base, simply improving the tax effort results in this 50 to 150% improvement, which I have mentioned before. And this usually does not require any significant funding. What it does require, and again, I mentioned this before, is political will and political courage. We are quite happy to engage with county governments to help them improve their accountability and transparency systems in general, and support the focus of the county councils on own source revenue generation. The issue of OSR generation is not a technical issue. It is not an issue of the county administration. It is a public matter. So it should be in the focus of attention of the council, and the council should regularly review the OSR targets and should regularly engage in discussions about the progress or lack of progress as it may happen. So this is why the focus, in my opinion, should not be so much on broad strategies at the county level as on specific revenue enhancement action plans that should really identify the targets as well as the means of achieving those targets. This is where the major challenge is. And this is, in fact, a litmus test, if you wish, of the actual willingness of counties to make improvements and changes for the better in this area. And as I said, we are quite happy to support this revenue enhancement action planning at the county level.
Stephen Masha, we will just want you to elaborate briefly on the recent government policy on embracing TADAT at the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council.
As a government, one of the issues that has been bedeviling devolution has been the rise on pending bills. The level of pending bills has been increasing year in, year out. So as an office that is responsible for overseeing the implementation of budgets at the two levels of government, we picked this as a very, very important issue, because it has caused a lot of suffering, not only to the companies, but also largely to the Kenyan population, and also some effect on even the tax outcome that comes from the activities that these companies do undertake. So it's a matter that we picked up at the IBEC level. IBEC is the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Forum. This forum brings together all the CCs for finance across the 47 counties, and as well as important PFM players, and is chaired by the Deputy President. At the IBEC level, our request, after having the exposure to TADAT, we saw it as a tool that can make a huge contribution as far as filling in that gap and ensuring counties are able to mobilize enough adequate resources from their own local sources. So having seen that opportunity and having seen the value from the trainings that as an office we attended, a couple of us have attended from the office, we decided to pick it and seek the approval from the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council to be able to roll this out across the country so that each county government can be able to undertake an assessment and also establish where they are in as far as adopting international good practices concerned. So far, in the country, we've undertaken 11 TADAT assessments. Out of those 11, there are 3 assessments where the Office of the Controller of Budget has directly been involved. We've been given the responsibility from the IBEC level to monitor, and as such, beginning 2022-23, this financial year, all the counties, there's a circular that has now been generated going up to the counties to allow the counties to budget for a revenue enhancement program where they'll be able to budget costs to be incurred in undertaking the assessments. I can say without fear of contradiction that going by the plan that is at hand, we will want to ensure that by the close of this financial year, all the 47 counties, the 36 counties that are yet to undertake TADAT assessments will have undertaken those assessments, resources permitting, and will be able to move forward with a clear understanding of where they stand in the various areas as far as tax mobilization is concerned. So that's where we are as a country and the direction that we have chosen to embrace the TADAT framework, so that we are able to enhance our local resources as far as the county operations are concerned. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on that, Des.
The last speaker, that is John Chakasikwa, kindly bring in the aspect of the ATAF, African Tax Forum, in this collaboration that we are having in regard to the strategy development workshop and the other players involved. This being a first one of its own kind, what do you think ATAF can bring in the whole process to enrich it?
Perhaps instead of talking about ATAF as such, I think everyone understands the portfolio that ATAF has now, covering the whole of Africa in terms of tax administration. But perhaps without looking specifically on ATAF, but looking at the region, which is south of Africa, the Southern Africa in particular, I think there is scope out of this workshop. The lessons that are coming through, there is scope for the collaboration that we've been talking about. There is scope in terms of strengthening the local authorities through the collaboration with the national governments, the National Revenue National Revenue Authorities. And I think ATAF already, if I may indicate that, they have already embraced that, and the discussions are there in terms of having the capacity building in all the members of ATAF. And in terms of what we are focusing in terms of domestic revenue mobilization, I think I've made the point earlier to say, when we look at trying to strengthen the democracies, strengthen the capability of local government being able to provide services, that becomes key in terms of giving them the road to fish, as it were, where you have less and less central government support or allocations from central government, but they strengthen themselves in terms of revenue mobilization at the local level. And the idea being that that strength, that capacity, that capability, really they have to learn from the central government or revenue authority, because we have charted the ways before them, or revenue authorities have had more experience in tax administration. And TADAT coming through, I think, is the first step in terms of scoping where the gaps exist, and then having the support to come through to close those gaps. So without really talking on behalf of ATAF, but understanding that as ATAF, as member states, as the Secretariat, that effort is in place, that commitment is in place, and work is underway to strengthen domestic revenue mobilization, not perhaps just at the national level, but I think it goes to all the levels, even the sub-national levels.
Thank you, John. I think this has been a very, very productive, very incisive in terms of the conversation. We could have talked even up to tomorrow, but time couldn't allow us. I just want to thank all of you for taking this sacrifice to come and speak your minds in terms of the ideals of the workshop that we are having for Nairobi City County. Thank you so much. See you next time.